any more credit from the international financial markets, it seems the country is making an about-turn on the issue. Kenya is set to float another Eurobond worth approximately 124 billion shillings in efforts to meet growing debt obligations. This will be Kenya's fourth Eurobond, which will go towards refinancing maturing loans. In total, Kenya's debt load stands at 7.3 trillion shillings as of December 2020. The country's present budget deficit is pegged at 930 billion shillings, with the budget policy statement placing the national budget at 3.01 trillion shillings. Now, we want to have this conversation, and joining me is Dominic Omondi, who is a senior business reporter here at the Standard Group. Thank you very much, Dominic, for joining us here on News Desk. So, what exactly does this mean for Kenyans, another Eurobond?
Ashley, thank you very much for having me. I know this is a very sensitive topic on the Eurobond, given the history that we've had on the first Eurobond that the country borrowed in 2014. But basically what this means is that we, as you said it, we are kind of moving back to where we started, and we are reverting to what we've been trying to avoid, at least ever since the current CS for Treasury came in, which is to avoid expensive debt, which includes Eurobond or loans from commercial banks or export credit and all those. Those are commercial loans which are very expensive, and which basically are the reasons why we are where we are currently, where basically we can say we are in a debt crisis of some sort. So, us going back into the international capital market, it means that we are going to tap yet another expensive loans, which comes with very high interest rates, a very short grace period, if there is a grace period, loans that have very short repayment period, and that is going to, add some pressure on our tax revenue, if you say, because then you're going to have a situation where you need to plow more into our tax earnings so that you can repay those loans. This is one of the situations that we wanted to avoid, and actually that's why we approached the IMF so that we can at least try and put our house in order and try and reduce our debt vulnerability. So it's going to be very tough in terms of our debt service cost when we take in more Eurobond loans, yes.
All right, and I know this is partly because of the COVID-19 pandemic, but even before, Kenya had this trend of borrowing and borrowing and borrowing. Talk to us about that. Yeah,
the COVID-19, which has really affected almost every part of the world currently, health-wise and economically, unfortunately found us in a very precarious position where our tax revenues weren't that good, our debt vulnerabilities were really bad, and we were our expenditure was kind of bloated. And so we had what economists call a very narrow fiscal space. So when COVID-19 came, it actually reduced our earnings in terms of export earnings. And as you know, with export earnings, that's where you get hard currency like dollar that you can use to repay your dollar-denominated debts. But then export revenues went down. You also have things like tourism, which really, as a result of COVID-19 and the restrictions, the lockdowns and all that, you had very fewer and fewer tourists coming into the country. And so in terms of tourist receipts, who also, give us a lot in terms of hard currency, also reduced. So as a result, we found ourselves in a situation where our earnings in terms of hard currency was reduced, but we needed to repay some of these loans, and also we needed to borrow. But remember, we have a very short, narrow fiscal space. We do not have the window to borrow, and yet you have an economy that is not doing very well, so you need to borrow, but again, you do not have the space. So it really found us in a very bad situation, and I think it's the mistakes that we made before that are now coming back to haunt us this time around, yes.
All right. Now, by the end of December, the public debt stood at around 7.3 trillion. That is 65.6% of the GDP. We seem to be in a cycle. How do we salvage the country from this cycle? How do we get Kenya out of this borrowing cycle?
Well, some of the experts that we've been speaking to kind of try to categorize our way out of this quagmire into two. The first and the immediate point of action is to get us out of this financial crisis, if you can call it a financial crisis, and that is trying to restructure the debt so that you can move some of these debt payments forward. What the National Treasury has done so far is to ask for a debt repayment holiday from some rich countries, well, the G20, and they've gotten to save around 74 billion. But that is, as someone put it, that's a painkiller. You know, you still have an underlying issue that needs to be addressed, and that's why it's important in the medium term for the government to approach some of these major creditors and arrange for restructuring of the loan so that they can push it forward and give them some space so that they can use the money they save or the little that they get to help the economy to grow, to recover from the pandemic. But even more important, experts are saying it's really important that the government try to resuscitate the economy by channeling funds where the economy can really pick up and help it get some revenue. So you talk of essential areas like SMEs, which for a very long time haven't been getting enough funds. So of course, there is some emphasis on putting some money into SMEs. There is a need for the government to bring back, to increase, to push up the aggregate demand, basically. And that is by perhaps the monetary policy, loosening it. I don't know if they can loosen it any further, but ensuring that there is more money in circulation, people can spend, and the economy can grow, basically, yeah.
All right, thank you very much, Dominic Omondi. They are a senior business reporter here at the Standard Group, just shedding light. What exactly does this mean for Kenya? Another Eurobond worth 124 billion shillings. But away from that, new